What is the scariest, strangest, most unexplainable thing that has happened to you while home alone? This happened when I was a kid. I used to sleep with my door closed and I have no idea what time it was, but I had heard my door creak open. When I opened my eyes, I could only make out a figure of a strange tall man with a hat and a coat. He just sat on my bed and stared at my door. This went on for a few minutes before he got up and left. I don't have many memories of my childhood, but this one I can relive very well. My sister and I were home alone and we heard someone big running up the stairs. The stairs make lots of noise with slight pressure, so when there's someone big on them you can tell. I went out of my room to check but saw no one anywhere, and my sister also came out of her room and she asked if that was me. I said no, and we both looked around to see if there was anyone but found no one in the whole house. We were confused and called our parents and just waited until they got back, and that was that. I woke up in the middle of the night to someone standing next to my bed. I thought I knew who it was. A friend, and this person shared the same physique, but remembered that they don't drive, and I have never given them my address. I talked to my parents in the morning, but they had never woken up. Besides, this person was rail thin. Definitely neither my mom nor dad. I still don't know 100% of all that happened. The night was a blur. I remember only bits and pieces. I was working on something in the garage at home. We have 4 bikes in there. One of the bike bells rang on its own. A few days later, I was standing on the opposite side of the kitchen from where the garbage disposal is located. Suddenly the disposal turned on for a second. One night when my parents were out and I was home alone, I was about 11 to 12 at the time, the chain broke on the wait for the dong on the grandfather clock, causing it to crash to the bottom of the case. It resounded through the house, as if a break-in were underway. I hid in my room with the door locked until they got home and discovered the source of the noise. There it was, grandfather's pendulum still swinging, but no dong striking on the hour. When I was 15, my mom and stepdad went to the casino for the night and left me home alone. I was up late playing Condemned 2. Well, there is a part in that game where you are getting chased by a rabid bear. At the same time of the bear jumping out, my stepdad banged on my bedroom window and sent me jumping at least 5 feet in the air. And they say white people can't jump. Apparently my stepdad won $1,000 and wanted to come home early. There was a campfire smell in a 2-foot diameter in between my family room and my dining room. Had not used the fireplace in months. The fan was off. There was no smell in the common hallway, condo, or outside. It was approximately 2 feet across and 6 feet tall. It took about 20 minutes to dissipate. No neighbors had fireplaces going, summer, and there were no fires. It was not a fireplace smell, but a campfire smell. Extremely strong, but no explanation. It was not near an outside wall, but the middle of an area. Edit, it was mid-afternoon when this happened. My family was gone visiting other family, and I was holding down the house, feeding the pets and such while they were gone, listening to music on my headset, singing along loudly. I hear someone shout, "Shut up," and I shout back, "Rude." Took me about 3 seconds to realize something was wrong. Only other person home was asleep across the house when this happened, so I know it wasn't anyone pranking me, but I was sleeping in the living room on the couch, had the TV on for background. I had just fallen asleep when the couch I was sleeping on began shaking back and forth. At first it was subtle, but it got worse for about 6 or 7 seconds and then just stopped. I heard the couch clattering on the hardwood floor and the feeling was unmistakable. Nothing like that has ever happened to me before or since. I bought an electric bike a few days ago. I had the battery plugged into the charger in my room. I had left my house for a few hours, and when I got back it was unplugged and in a completely different spot. I still don't know how to explain this. I call it's just the house settling. My house was built in 1901. It creaks and groans. I've seen unexpected smoke, no fire. I see weird lights. My cat sees things I don't see. I have no explanations. Kinda weird to mention, I guess. A lot of this one started when my girlfriend showed up. We both agree that some weird energy followed her here. A few weeks after I moved into my house, the wind somehow slammed my door open even though it was locked. The only thing I can guess is that I didn't close the door all the way, but then why wouldn't the wind have blown it in more gently? Why did it slam open? I legit thought someone was breaking in. So, background information, I have other voices in my head. Characters I've created. Not gonna go into details, but one of them pressures me to off myself one night. It was cold and I was in a blanket. Usually they aren't that loud. This night though, I was playing Roblox and decided to open up about the voices. Yes, I know, it's not good to open up to strangers, but it was one of those nights. Suddenly, the voice in question got really loud and told me not to talk about it. They hadn't done this before. The others were silent, I'm guessing they were asleep. After arguing with me for a while, everyone was quiet. And then, one started talking to me about it. The others slowly came up too, and it actually felt real. Even the one that was attacking me previously was trying to help. This hasn't happened since. I'm still confused why they were so freaking vivid that night. Oh wait, I have another one besides my dream one. I worked as an electrical apprentice and my journeyman was my ex-roommate and one of my best friends. One day we're in a brand new house that was just framed in and he was installing plates in the kitchen and I was doing smoke alarms upstairs. I heard this continuous sound that sounded like people taking then arguing but couldn't make it any words. Heard it for almost 2 minutes and at first thought it was people outside, but it sounded like they were arguing like they wanted to hide their argument in public. Then I realize it seems like it was coming from downstairs. So I go to the stairs and as I get there it starts sounding like the plastic covers for the plates my buddy is putting on crinkling. But then after a couple steps, it sounds like a whisper argument again. I get down to the bottom and it suddenly stops. I ask him if he's just constantly crinkling that plastic for some reason and it turns out he's installing the hood and the dishwasher. None of the plastic that could possibly explain the sound. Go back upstairs and it's gone. I worked with him for a couple years. I've never heard anything since like that. Once I was browsing in my laptop and suddenly felt dizzy. So I just laid down on my bed and slept in an instant. Later I woke up in another room. It may be sleepwalking, but I have never had any similar experience before or after this incident. I was playing on my laptop with the TV in front of me. The TV turned on, I adjusted my positioning to see if I hit the remote by accident. The feeling of the hand was still there for a few seconds after though. Later, when we all went to have lunch, I sat with my back towards the wall, no one coming behind me. I felt the hand on my shoulder again. Maybe a hallucination, I don't know. It hasn't happened since. Short one that I avoid thinking too hard about. I was 8 years old and home alone, normal for my culture. I went to go use the restroom in the guest bathroom that usually no one uses because it was my grandmother's old bathroom when she lived with us. I washed my hands and left to probably continue playing video games downstairs. When my sister got home she went upstairs and then came back down to get onto me for leaving the water running. I thought I left the sink running, but when I went to turn it off the shower curtain was closed and the shower was on in full heat. She swears she just heard it and came down and I swear I didn't turn on the shower. 13 years later and I have no clue how it turned on, but my sister and I stayed downstairs until our dad came home from work and turned it off. I live alone in a small studio apartment and am neurotic about cleaning. Seriously. I rarely leave the house with anything out of order or anything dirty. I also tend to avoid leaving small blemishes like fingerprints. One day after work I came home to a large handprint on my mirror. It wasn't the same size as my hand and I'm pretty sure the building manager was out that day. I don't know what the deal is, if I just missed something cleaning or something else, but nothing else was touched and there's really nowhere to hide in my place. I like to think I was just sloppy. I wasn't alone, but I was sleeping in bed with my sister one night when I woke up and heard the room door open. This dark figure of a woman entered the room. It wasn't my mother because she isn't as thin as this mysterious figure was. It came closer and stood next to where I lay. It placed its hand on my chest and I felt my heart suddenly beat faster, then she placed it on my neck and I fell asleep. The following morning, I asked my mother if she had come in the room at night, and she said no. To this day, I remain baffled at what took place that night. I'm very sure that it wasn't a dream, I was fully conscious. It was pretty disturbing, but I don't give that incident much thought anymore. I got a new phone with a new number, but my old phone number was still attached to a bunch of stuff for two-step verification, so I had them both on me for a few days. One day, I get home from work while my wife is out, set the old phone down next to my computer, and go downstairs to the kitchen. Come back and there is no phone anywhere to be found. Still haven't found it. About 3 days later I'm at work and get a call from that number. I tell my wife to go to her grandparents' place and come home early to sweep the attic/under the house just to be safe and didn't find anything. My husband died a little over a year ago. Since then, boxes and things keep falling off shelves and counters. These are not temporary boxes, but items that have been stored on bookshelves for years. Yesterday I'm on a work call from home and hear this gigantic crash. Pan fell off the storage shelf in the dining room. Cat was upstairs at the time. Pan was flat balanced on top of another pan. I've started asking my husband if there's something he wants or needs, lol. When I was a child, I had life-size, aka 3 feet tall, Power Ranger dolls. I usually kept them in my room stationed around my canopy bed to guard me at night. One day I was planning to take them all to preschool for show and tell. I was like 4 or 5. As I was preparing them to come downstairs with me, the red Power Ranger came to life and pushed me down the stairs. I only vaguely remember this incident, but when I brought it up recently at a family gathering, my mom said that it wasn't the first time I had mentioned the red Power Ranger being lifelike, and that I had frequently been heard talking to people in that particular apartment. The incident of me being pushed down the stairs apparently frightened my parents so much that they took me away and we stayed with my grandmother until my parents could find a new apartment to live in. Needless to say, the Power Rangers did not move with us. I was home alone, cleaning a gun of mine when I heard the front door open and close. My other gun, which was beside me, I grabbed and walked to the main room of my house where the door was located. Nothing. I called out, "Make yourself known, I have a weapon." Nothing. Went through 3 rooms and then went back to the living room. My gun I was cleaning was put back together. I went over to it and was very concerned. I heard in a deep drawl, "That wasn't very smart." Now was it? The door behind me slammed shut. With a deep demonic cackle, I unloaded my mag into the door and kicked it down. Blood drops all the way to my front door. My camera to my house didn't catch anyone leaving or entering. It was facing the door too. 2 years ago, my mom and dad went to a concert. It was 1 a.m., remember that. I went downstairs to get a snack and a drink. The TV turns on the news. I was watching it, then the TV went very dim. I closed the TV. I saw the clock in my kitchen was at 12 a.m. But when I came down it was 1 a.m. I just thought it was a glitch in the clock. I fell asleep somehow in that night. The next morning my friend asked if I wanted to hang out. I said yes, because I have nothing better to do. I was at his house from 1 to 4 p.m. I came home, everyone was up and home. I saw my dad take down the TV and I asked what's wrong. He said that the TV is too dim, I can't see anything. I was in shock. I went upstairs and this still haunts me to this day. A few weeks ago, I was cleaning the house. Just casually mopping the floor and generally tidying up. Then I woke up. Half an hour later. No idea what happened. 1 minute I was completely conscious and then I was waking up in a completely different place to where I remember being with absolutely no recollection of anything else having happened earlier that day. One day I was home alone, somehow I was asleep and awake at the same time. My eyes were open, I could see around me, but I couldn't move any part of my body. It was scary. Imagine if something comes in the room and you can't react to defend yourself. My sister and I were home alone after school watching TV, when the kettle turned. My sister asked me if I did it and I said no, so we just brushed it off. Shortly after we hear what sounds like shuffling feet walking across the linoleum floor in the kitchen. My sister grabbed our house phone and we ran outside thinking someone was inside with us. We stood outside in our carport staring at the front door waiting to see what the noise was, and we hear what exactly sounds like 2 feet jump off our front porch and take a few steps towards us, all while not seeing anybody or the front door opening. We ran down the street and phoned our mom and waited for her to get home. That memory will live in my mind forever, and my sister and I still talk about it to this day. About a week after my father died, I was standing in my hallway folding clothes when I felt a hand on my lower back. The hand was firm and lingering. I was sure my daughter had come home and had snuck up on me. I turned around ready to say gotcha, but there was no one there. I was completely alone. At my old apartment, midday I went and laid down to take a nap. I got into my bed and was only laying there for 1 to 2 minutes, so I was still wide awake. I had my bedroom door mostly closed, but slightly cracked open so it wasn't latched. I had my back to the door, but all of a sudden it busts open. It sounded like someone punched it and it just flew open. I lived alone and I had no windows open, so it wasn't the wind or anything. I really don't know what happened there. All my doors to the outside were locked, no chance somebody got in and I would have heard them if they tried to leave, but there was nothing. Luckily I never had any weird experiences after that, but it was pretty frightening. Last week, I heard this very distinctive noise someone makes when rubbing fog off a mirror while in the shower. And there were fingerprints on the mirror when I left the shower. Boyfriend was on a business trip and my daughter was at school. I was sitting in an armchair when I heard a faint buzzing noise coming from the fireplace directly behind me. I whipped my head around because I thought it was a wasp and I'm terrified of them, and I saw what looked like a little glowing blue ball of electricity hovering a foot off of the ground in front of the fireplace. It startled me and I jumped out of the chair, and when I looked back it was gone. It all happened within a couple of seconds. I still can't figure out if I hallucinated or had some kind of medical episode. There was a thunderstorm at the time, so I wonder if it was a weird static reaction or something. I was home alone in my early teens, late afternoon but not yet dark, just reading a book or magazine or something. Suddenly all the lights started flickering, the TV turned itself on, and my digital watch alarm started going off for no reason. Lasted about a minute and then went back to normal. Never found out what caused it. When I was still living at my mom's, one night we were both home and we heard the sound of keys entering our front door. That was scary enough. Until the door actually opened. Myself and my mother are the only people who have a key to that front door, so we were absolutely terrified. Luckily, it was only our neighbor's drunk daughter who'd gotten the houses confused, but we had no idea how she had used her own key to her house to get into ours. We checked the keys, they were completely different, and we even tried it several times to see if it was just drunk magic. No amount of force or twisting and wiggling could open that door with her key. It was definitely drunk magic. This is my mom's story from when she was a kid. She was 12 years old and home alone after school. No one else was home. She was hanging out in her room that was located in the center of a long hallway. Suddenly she hears loud banging, like someone is banging on the wall while walking down the hallway. She opens her door and looks out, but no one is there. She goes and gets back in bed, and the banging starts again. She flies out of bed and rips the door open, but again, no one is there. She thinks this must be her brother playing some kind of trick. So she waits by the door, and again the banging starts. She waits until it gets right by her door, she flings it open and jumps out into the hall, but no one is there. Then she sees something out of the corner of her eye. She turns her head and sees a pair of scissors stabbed into the hardwood floor. She ran back into her room, locked the door, put her back to the wall and stayed there till all her family finally came home hours later. When I was a teenager, I always felt hot at night and the AC was weak in my room. It was normal for me to sleep in the living room where cool air would circulate much better. We also had 2 kittens that were very hyper at night, totally normal to hear some movement. One night I could hear the computer chair behind the couch running back and forth over tile lines. Finally, annoyed over the sound, I decided to go adjust the seat somehow so that it won't move. I opened my eyes only to see the kittens actually sleeping across from me, and finally when my brain computes it can't be the cats, the chair stops like it was grabbed. I just laid there eyes wide for what felt like an hour, not daring to look. When my dad died. I was in my family home by myself and I kept hearing a small bell ringing. I'd lived there for years and never heard the bell before or since. I searched around the house and it was coming from my mom's bedroom. On the window ledge was a small porcelain bell, but it didn't have the ringer inside. I went back downstairs and the ringing started again. I rang my mom at work and asked her if she knew where it could be coming from. She broke down crying and said years before I was born her and my dad had agreed to ring the bell if they ever died to let the other person know they were okay. I'm almost certain I never knew this story. I was about 13 and home alone when I definitely heard someone call my name. It sounded like my brother-in-law. I was living with him and my sister at the time. They arrived home about 15 minutes later. Was quite unsettling. I was laying on the bed when I decided, for no apparent reason, to stand up, back against my closest, and tried to meditate with my eyes closed. It was pitch black in my room, not the kind of oh look it's night. I literally couldn't see anything. The blinds were fully down too, and it was around 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. After a while I decided to focus on my eyes for a few seconds and then I opened them. I got this rush of euphoria like I was a better version than myself. I could think at hyper speed, and for what it lasted I was so confident in myself. I can't quite explain other than I was a better version than myself. But the weirdness didn't end here. As soon as I opened my eyes, all of the contents of my room lit up, like I had infrared, but with white instead of green. I could see clear outlines of everything like it was nothing, and yet I knew it was still pitch black in there. It was so crazy, it really felt like I had superpowers for that brief amount of time, and my depth perception on the objects was spot on, not just a filter over my eyes, and there were no shadows. Every detail was highlight, then everything just suddenly faded and I was staring at just black. My vision returned to normal instantly, and the feeling of adrenaline and euphoria vanished with it. I tried to experience this again, but I never could. It's different than your eyes adjusting in the dark, because you can't see anything in pitch black environments. I could see with such clarity, such detail. It was beautiful. I was around 14 years old and watching a movie alone at night, and we had a rack with hanging kitchen utensils in the kitchen, and somehow all of a sudden they went cling and were moving. The doors were all closed and there were no open windows. Till this day I don't know how it happened, but it scared me so bad I was afraid to go anywhere in the house for a long time. Not long after I started dating my now husband, I was staying at his place where he lived with his mom and dad. The house is a 100-year-old farmhouse, and my boyfriend's room was in the attic, which was just one large open room with his bed on one side with some cupboards and the old chimney on the other. The chimney was visible from the bed. On this night, my boyfriend was away for work. His parents were asleep downstairs in their own rooms, and it was about 4 a.m. I had a really bizarre nightmare. There were black rabbits running into their burrows, but in reverse, and the sound was like a record being played backwards. I remember the sense of being chased. I woke up with a jump and remember sitting up to have a drink of water and wake myself up, check the time on my phone, and they lay there telling myself it was just a dream and I was okay. I was looking towards the old chimney when I realized there was a dim green light coming from behind it. I thought it was my imagination and kept staring, trying to figure out what it was. The light slowly got brighter, then suddenly a dark figure with a neon green backlight peeked out from around behind the chimney. I yelped and dived under the covers and stayed there, only sticking my hand put after what felt like forever to turn on the bedside light. I know I was awake and I stayed awake, only getting out from under the blankets when I heard my boyfriend's parents in the kitchen the next morning. I brushed it off to them as a weird dream because I didn't want them to think I was odd, but I know I was fully awake when I saw the green light. My boyfriend, his siblings, and his parents had never had any strange experiences in the house, and I never had another. My last 2 years of college I lived in the same house. Lived in the city. For 2 years whenever I would walk at night there was this one street light that always went out when I walked under it. It doesn't matter if it was 6 p.m., 10 p.m., or 3 a.m. It always went out. I thought it was so weird. Every time I've gone back to visit in the last 8 years, I've walked by that same street light in the evening and it has gone out. So not scary, but definitely strange and inexplicable. Probably too late for this, but when I was 15 I shared a room and bed with my 7-year-old sister. I was up late one night, way past her bedtime, on my laptop watching the movie the night before, and I looked up to see my sister standing facing the wall with her arms crossed and in white thermal pajamas. I began to ask what she was doing, but I only went 2 words into my sentence before I turned my head and realized she was sleeping right next to me. I was living in a flat share with 2 friends during uni. One weekend they left home to see their family and I was home alone. Around 10 p.m. I hear a window or door opening and banging the frame. I presumed one of them had left their window open before leaving. I lazily decided to stroll over without turning the lights on to go shut the window. After going into both rooms there was no open window. I walked back out into the hall and the noise was coming from my bedroom now. I was totally lucid, but had a very sudden fear that I should leave. I jogged to the front door, picked up some shoes and left the flat. Lots of people had a joke at me being scared, but I've never had that feeling in my life since. Read a lot of stories in here and became worried, because most of such cases as described here could be caused by hallucinations from the mild carbon dioxide poisoning. Lads, please check if your gas boiler has an issues with the exhaust. It could leak carbon dioxide gas into the house, causing anxiety, nausea, headaches, feeling of being watched and hallucinations. In bad cases it could kill you, so please if you have something like that in your house, check the carbon dioxide levels in-house ASAP.